Antonia. Hey, congratulations for Cordelia.
Thank you. That's very kind.
Hey, so tell us how you were brought on board onto this project in the first place.
So I was acting in a TV series that the director Adrian Shergold was directing, obviously, and so I've been cast in that, and we were filming for a number of months, and then towards the end, as we became closer, he approached me and said, "Could we meet for lunch?" Because he had something that he'd been working on for a number of years, and he presented me with the project that was Cordelia.
Now, we noticed that you also have writing credit on Cordelia. Could you talk about that a little bit on how you shaped this movie?
Sure, yeah. I mean, because it was originally written in a sense. I mean, it was quite a bulky script that I was handed that Adrian wrote, I think, initially in 2007. And so it had, what happens sometimes with scripts is that it was put on the shelf and sort of left to gestate. And then when he met me, he thought that he could bring it back to life. And and because he knew that I'd been writing for a very long time, and as well as acting, and I had many films in development, etc., he thought it would, he's very generous in the sense that he said if I was going to embody and take on a female character that is essentially the whole film, because he's a male of a different generation, that I could then infuse it with, a more truthful aspect to the character. But then what I ended up doing, actually, I sort of tackled it like with a sledgehammer, because what I found mostly there was so, because it is in a sense it's his personal experience and his own journey told through a female protagonist, but there were so many characters, so many setups, and so I had to be quite economical and cutthroat in economizing the thriller and genre aspect to it.
Great. So, how did you get into the mental headspace of Cordelia? Because this is quite a challenging character to play.
I think I understood her, and that it's not even her, because Cordelia is such a amalgamation of personalities in a sense, like I think she projects an identity, and her internal is like a different character. So she's this kind of complex mix of intent. And what really interested me about someone like that is they're the kind of people that I was always intrigued by, that live in capital cities, like very cities that are just infused with so much energy, like New York or London or whatever. And the idea that so many people, they're rammed together, and they live in this melting pot, and especially in apartments where people are literally stacked on top of one another, yet they don't engage in any kind of empathetic manner, and the loneliness that comes with that, and basically people that are amidst such affluence. It is the fight of the fittest, and there's no time for like a lower output, lower input, and so people have to just be survivors, akin to rats. So that's what I made of the story in her.
It's funny is because I live in the same place for more than a decade and a half, and I still don't know my neighbors. But
Really, where is that? Where do you live?
I live here in California. Actually live in a house, but I don't know any of my next door neighbors or
Really?
any
Oh
of that.
no.
I think I only met one of them for the first time because I just needed a tree branch cut, and I had to go into his yard.
That's appalling. You have no excuse in California. People are meant to be nice, because the sun's shining.
I know it is funny, especially when I travel to Los Angeles, because people tend to like to avoid other people
Yeah.
there for some unknown reason. Like they don't really say hi to you on the sidewalks over there in that city. But yeah,
Yeah.
I could sense where Cordelia is actually coming from, and you start to create like stories in your head on what your neighbor's like.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, especially what's so interesting about her is because of this like traumatic event that happens to her, she becomes very incubated, you know, like it's like her skin has been ripped off, and so she's so vulnerable. So in order to survive the outside exterior, she has to shut down and become like a invisible or passive. I mean, I keep saying that Cordelia's the initial identity that we see with her is kind of the passive female stereotype, which is like this very diminutive, little quiet, softly spoken female mouse character. And that's, I see as that's a performance to get through life and to be invisible and treated with kindness in the world. You know, and it's really interesting to me what people do are willing to do to survive and be accepted amongst others.
Now, obviously, Cordelia, you know, has a transformation in this film, but you also have the challenge of playing your twin
Yeah.
in this movie. Do you see this as like, you know, just playing multiple roles all into one film this way?
Yeah, nicely noted. Pretty much. I mean, I saw it as three characters because Cordelia has two sides to herself and then the twin, of course, you know, and they're all sort of like three versions of the same, if you will, you know, because it's basically Cordelia is, she's chosen a manner. She goes through this transformation, as you say, like and then her true self comes out, and then her twin is, because Cordelia is like, it's like she's stunted. It's like she's, when she has this traumatic event, it's like time ceases to continue, and she's held captive by herself in that traumatic happening. I mean, it does happen, you know, people sometimes they cannot progress past a massive trauma, and she shuts herself off and she lives in an apartment and she's incredibly vulnerable in that encasement. And her sister, who's her twin, is like a version of herself that's continued on and has lived a life. And that's why they're so different.
So when you were going through the filming process of acting on, you know, these different characters, who were you acting against? Obviously, we're talking about like the twins here.
A dot on a camera lens box. No, they had a young actress stand in for more for camera. So things like, I mean, it's fascinating. I find things like this fascinating technically, because you can do things like cheating, doubles, much more of it's digital, but we shot on film and it's much harder to do when you're shooting on film. So it was more for costuming. There's a couple of moments where the twins pass each other physically, so it was more for the movement of the costume. But no, I was pretty much, yeah, I mean, it was a challenge for things like for it to be very believable and to be in the moment. But I mean, that's acting. You just believe it and, you know, you can achieve it. But no, it was interesting because as well, I was very much able to embody and embrace the fact that I think a lot of what happens with Cordelia is her understanding of things. Like she maybe doesn't have a full grasp on human interaction, and a lot of it is a challenge. So a lot of her engagements with her sister is a struggle, and so you can embrace that as an actor because it is about your own interpretation, her interpretation. So it's not even like she's having a conversation with someone, she's having a version of a conversation. I'm being quite like Freudian about it all.
One of the things about you know, this film is fascinating is it really takes pretty much in almost nearly a single location. Does that make it easier on you?
Yeah. I thought you mean that the apartment, the house.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was really important because, again, going back to what I was saying about people and isolation and what happens to the mind, is that when you reduce your senses or your sensory input, you know, if you like deprive someone of light or of air or of interaction, things can happen to the way you perceive like what is real and what isn't. And that's what I thought was so interesting about that kind of reclusive nature, you know, Howard Hughes being a great example, but like, and so being in this house, it's such a huge hulking place and quite preserved and very heavy and without air and without light. I thought it was really interesting to be there the whole time because, you know, that's effectively the main character in the film. I think the apartment is one of the lead characters.
And speaking of the other lead character, how was it like working with Johnny Flynn as Frank in this film?
Well, I did. I've worked with Johnny before, and so it was very easy because we know each other very well. So one of his, I don't know if you know his history as an actor, but he was like a child actor, and then he stopped and he became a musician full time. And so his first job back, or his first role, job sounds very practical, role back as an actor, as an adult, was a film that he and I are in as leads together. So it was a very natural progression.
So in real life, he could play the cello.
I beg your pardon?
He could play that instrument in real life.
Oh yeah. Yes, you didn't know he's a musician. Yes, he's like a pop star.
Oh,
He's very well known, Johnny Flynn. Yeah.
Most excellent. Well, Antonia, let me start wrapping things up. What's next for you up the pipeline?
Well, I made my own film, so that's doing festivals, and so that was at South by Southwest, and now it's going to like London and things like that. I'm in a TV show that's coming out in September, Dangerous Liaisons. I have another film that David Lynch produced, so it's quite busy.
You do sound very, very busy. One last thing before I let you go. The mouse or the rat that you held on to, what was that? Was that a real creature, or was that CGI?
No, there's no CGI. Well, is there? I think maybe a phone label with CGI off. No, it's a real mouse. It's a mouse.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Real mouse, real cat.
Well, I guess we have to do everything practical. Well, Antonia,
is it unusual to have a real mouse? People
I think it's the idea of like handling animals on a production, and so sometimes you really don't know what a mouse would actually do.
But it's only a mouse, and I wasn't holding like a boa constrictor or like a kangaroo or it's just a mouse.
But then again, some people are also afraid to hold a mouse. So
so I'm going to keep talking because no one's asked about the mouse, and I think I enjoyed the mouse days the most. I didn't realize that I had such an affinity with rodents, but I really do.
Well, that is something different from a lot of people.
Yeah.
Well, Antonia, thank you very much for speaking to us about your film Cordelia. Hopefully we get to see you more down the road.
Cool, thank you.